Hello my loves, I'm Ellie Frost. Thank you so much for being on my channel. I appreciate you plugging in, commenting, liking, subscribing, sharing, just being here with me, because it is a place where we radically heal and transform during and after narcissistic abuse, right? Banish some of the misunderstandings about what this is, how people get caught up in this, which is so misunderstood, and actually how to heal from it, which again, honestly, like a lot of what's out there isn't actually truly healing us. It's keeping us stuck in a mental prison rather than our I just call it our sovereignty and our expansion. And I talked before on this channel about trauma release, right? So I do trauma release work with my clients and in my program Sovereign and everything I do, right? And a lot of people I work with and we release the trauma, they'll say things like, I know it happened to me, but it's like it happened to someone else. I've got the memory that it happened, but I haven't got the energetic charge. And that's what happens when we release trauma. I've chosen, and I had to be healed enough to do this. I wouldn't have known it was possible, or even, I don't recommend this, but it's just part of what I'm here to do, right? I chose to stay emotionally connected. Right, so I healed my trauma. I'm not traumatized, but I stay emotionally connected to what happened to me. One, I teach all of us, never forget what happened to you, right? That's like you've had your reality denied at such a big level that actually I don't feel there's any use in doing that, because when you can own what happened to you, understand it honestly on such a deep level, has nothing to do with you. It has much more to do with narcissists than it does anyone here. It's not because you're codependent. It's not just because you were abused as a child. Yes, certain things would have got normalized if you grew up. My dogs are barking. If you grew up around narcissists like I did. So I probably was more empathetic to that behavior, more unconscious when I was not consciously thinking about things. I'm more accepting of things that other people would never have accepted, sure. But again, there are many people that come from very difficult households and do not get narcissistically abused. So there's a lot of layers to this, and it's the focus on what's wrong with the victims rather than on this is a distortion on the planet that is so dark and so wrong in itself would actually set a lot of people free to start with, because our job on the planet is to heal and evolve, and that involves introspection and consciousness and looking at our wounds and moving towards evolution, which is to become, more, we're always whole, but more aligned with our hearts, more able to love, less defensive, less acting from our unconscious wounds. But none of us need to be narcissistically abused to do that, and plenty of people have tons of childhood wounds and don't become narcissists. So again, this excuse we've got, Arch, Milo, come on, this excuse we've got that people are being taught that the narcissist was just such a traumatized child. Honestly, the narcissists that I've been around that almost cost me my life, their childhood trauma was nothing compared to a lot of the people I've worked with. So that's not an excuse. In fact, when you've been traumatized, that's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to heal it. And everyone here will be taking responsibility for what's happened to them with a view to healing themselves, right? Taking responsibility for their own behaviour and their impact on other people. A narcissist would often say to you, well, it's not my intention to have hurt anyone. And your intentions don't matter if your impact is out. Consciousness is beyond, I was, just thinking of myself. I wasn't really careful about the impact that has on others. It's not just your intention, although they do intend to hurt you, whatever they say. It's malicious, it's spiteful. They know exactly what they're doing. They know they're causing pain. They see your pain and they like it. It gives them power and control. So I want to talk in this one about the fear of moving forwards after narcissistic abuse, because this is what keeps a lot of us stuck. Yeah? Our lives have changed so dramatically, often for such a long time. You might be married for decades, yeah? In my situation, I'd had a completely different life before I moved countries and got into chronic cycles. I think I had pretty much healed my childhood trauma to an extent of being able to live a pretty good life, right? I was successful. I wasn't operating from my wounds, but there were things I didn't know about. That was narcissism. And when I moved countries, I got into partnerships, business partnerships, friendships, communities where I was heavily targeted, Yeah, not just because of my, partly because of childhood wounds, partly because I had a bit of the people pleaser going on. Dogs are going crazy now. Partly because I'm light, and my light irritates a lot of demons, right? Lots and lots of reasons. And I didn't have the tools. I didn't know about being sovereign, which is, again, my program reopening in May. And like the key to really dissolving this in ourselves and then being able to dissolve it on the planet is claiming our sovereignty. But like, the life you know, even if it's abusive, feels safer to you than one you don't. When you've been in narcissistic abuse cycles, you've been stripped down so far that having the confidence to do anything can seem very overwhelming, more than for most people. So most people, they get scared about doing something that's new. But when you've been beaten down and your confidence and self-esteem has been stripped away, it can be frightening. And this is a journey we move through, right? It is not a reason to stay because we don't know how to move forward. But if we don't have the right tools and understand how to be sovereign, how to set boundaries, what our values are, what our standards are, how to manifest, how to heal our trauma as we go, which will flare up again every time you get in a situation that can remind you of what you've been through. That can happen to me still. I talked about my house move, and like why I kept living in hotels for a little bit longer than I needed to, right, was because it was scary to have a house again. I lost 2 houses. It was so devastating to me not to have a home. It was the scariest thing of my life. I left home at 18 to get away from my dad, and I was fiercely independent. And the woman I was before my sort of moving of countries and the really harsh things I went through, she didn't exist anymore. So we all have a story of why it's harder for us or why we're different from each other. You might look at me and think I'm different to you. You might think, well, she's smart or she's spiritual or whatever it is. And I promise you, there is so much more the same in us than there is differences. And we've all got those stories about why it's easier for someone else. They're all valid, but they're not necessarily true. I had a life that I'd built of independence and a good level of success, and I could not connect to that person at all. There was a year and a half at least where there's no way I could ever imagine being her again, and all I could do was think about that my life was over, that I would never ever be successful again, and that actually knowing what my life had been like and what it was now like seemed like such devastation to me. Like it was like the best of my life was done. Yeah, there was no way I could ever be and I felt even more of a failure because of it. I can't even put it in words. So all I'm saying about that is it doesn't really matter what the context is. It's terrible what you go through in these cycles. And we all have, I did the energy clearing the other day on releasing this idea that we're not actually connected in this because we think it's easier for someone else. And we might be scared that our story is more severe and ashamed of that. My stories were very severe and I was very ashamed of it. I felt very different from a lot of people, and I was completely isolated with no support for a lot of it, right? I was humiliated, laughed at. It was embarrassing what I went through. And I talk about in one of the videos, which is what my experience felt very much like, that when I was at my lowest and got into the romantic relationship with the last covert narcissist that I'll ever have anything to do with now, I'm done on all of that. I'm okay now, I'm sovereign. But like, it was like people were coming to feed off the carcass. Yeah, people thought they could now because I was in a low space. It didn't matter who I'd been. It didn't matter how many people I'd helped. Didn't matter anything I'd done in my life. I was a shell of who I was, and it seemed like instead of helping me, people would opportunist on it. You know what I mean? Like whatever I did have, they'd take. They felt entitled to abuse me, assault me, sexually, whatever they wanted to take. That's how it felt, and that's how I experienced it. And so in my lowest, instead of seeing kindness in the world, I was actually shown darkness in the world, and it really, really disturbed my spirit, my soul, in terms of, I heard Whitney Houston say that about some of the abuse cycles she went through. She said she was disturbed on a spiritual level, and that's how I felt at certain times. So what I've done with that is stay connected to it emotionally so I can use it, right? Rather than being angry and just spewing hate in the world, how can I actually connect this and dissolve this in the world? Because it's a real issue, and it's an issue that is pretty big. But this fear of moving on and this misunderstanding of you're not meant to forget about it. You're meant to heal the trauma so it doesn't have an energetic charge. But there are still times when I'm very, very sad about, I don't sit in sadness, but if when I feel it, I'm extremely sad. about that's how people would treat people. I'm extremely sad that we don't do better than that as a collective, you know, and that again, I've used that for my work. The dogs. I'm using that, right? I'm transmuting that by using it. I've already transmuted it in me. I'm not triggered by it, but I had to do a lot of personal work to not be triggered by it, to not let my, you know, that I can hold space for people and I can hold this in a pure way, that I can actually use it for transformation. You don't need to do that. You might heal and never want to think about narcissism ever again, and that's absolutely beautiful, you know? But like, the reason I stay connected is because I know that this has to matter to me a lot. This has to matter to me a lot so that I go for it in terms of changing it. That I don't, if I didn't stay emotionally connected, I wouldn't be as passionate about getting up every day and making videos and doing my best. You know what I mean? So I feel like I should shut. Okay, my dogs are extremely excited. Let's just give them the airtime. Do you understand we're making a YouTube video? They don't care. They had salmon and peas and broccoli. They're just like, our life is good. But you know what I mean? So like, the reason as well, I feel like I actually do believe this can change on the planet. I absolutely have everything. But like, I want you to know that even for me, right, with everything I know, with everything I'm doing, I still get the moments where I know where I was. Like, for example, at this exact time in my life, not that long ago, I know what happened to me. I know certain events and certain dates and things that happened that sometimes I'd rather forget, but I know that that's not what I need to do, right? And in fact, part of healing is being willing to receive the thing in life that you're scared of and move through it. Yeah, so I'm not scared anymore that everything's just going to blow up in my face. I'm not scared anymore that if I, you know, when I enter new relationships, people are just going to betray me, that I actually move through it with my sovereign skills, with the you know, my ability now to be sovereign, my boundaries, my values, my communication, my authenticity intact, my sovereignty intact energetically, so that I'm not avoiding life anymore, because a lot of the time, again, we fear of moving on, and so we just avoid life. We just avoid relationships. We just avoid our dreams, and that's not what I want to teach you. The end of the Sovereign Program is manifestation, manifesting the vision you want for your life. Yeah, because it's not just about surviving narcissistic abuse, but as part of this, we want to be healed. That's the first part of Sovereign, is the healing work, so that you're energetically strong, so that when you do go forward, right, and take the next big step, and ideas, memories, your brain reminds you of things, you've got not just the tools, but also one, you're healed enough not to be re-traumatized, and two, you're conscious enough to be able to just shed another layer of it, so that you consciously move through things towards your dreams, knowing that fears come up even if you've never been traumatized, and that now you can move through it, and it's healing to do so, right? We're not meant to just feel positive emotions. We're meant to process everything that is involved. You know, I teach people all the time energetic capacity, not just in this work, but in my other work that I do with visionaries and stuff. And like, all the time I'm teaching them to hold all of it, which means that as they take on more responsibility in their life, for example, in their businesses or in their visions and stuff, like everything comes with the good and bad, more responsibilities, more chaos and more joy, right? So if I add a family, if I add a business, if I add, there's a, you know, a wholeness to everything, and our energetic capacity to expand, you know, after we have to do what we've got capacity for. So sometimes that is just to isolate while we build strength and get sovereign, and then we let more in, and we build our capacity as we go. And that is the process of Sovereign, the same work, right? So if you want to join the next round, it's opening now. We start May 1st, open the doors for the warm-up, and then the official trainings will start on the 15th. Yeah, the payment plan on that, you won't be able to access the payment plan after this Friday, because even if you joined that payment plan now, you'll be let in late, basically, because you need to be paid up in full before you can get in the program. It's an amazing system. And other than that, just know that part of your healing journey will be, once you have healed the trauma, to go for life again. Yeah, it's a normal thing to not to, you know, to be very scared about how are you going to I've talked about this in other videos, like how people respond when they're still traumatized. You know, if they, for example, homeless people getting housed often go back to the streets because they can't, the emotions hit them, they don't know how to process the trauma. Not just a narcissistic abuse, it's the emotional hit that happens when we leave. You know, you think you're going to ride off into the sunset, but it's not like that. If you haven't processed and healed the emotions, you get this emotional backlash, and again, which makes a lot of people go back because they feel like in that window their life was better than the narcissist because they can predict it, they can control it, and although it's ups and downs, they know that life. If you haven't learned how to, and there's lots of tools on this channel to physically process, then you can get a big emotional hit when you leave, a big, because finally the body isn't in fight and flight anymore. Same as when the homeless people get rehoused, the body isn't fight and flight on the streets anymore, or fight and flight in the household anymore. And now all the stuff's coming to the surface to be processed. The body wants to heal, you see, right? So the things I teach you in Sovereign help with that. So do the tools on this channel. So I wanted to share that, and to know that like our life is I teach people to expand and heal as they go, not just to think you have to sit you can't sit really in a vacuum and heal. You have to understand how to heal, which is what I teach people in a very integrated, multidimensional way, so that you can be healing and expanding as you go. So you've got all of life. You are whole, because whole means all of it. Whole means, you know, I'm dealing with the whole of life. My joy, my pain, my stuff I'm healing, the stuff I'm expanding into. Not I'm putting everything in these isolated pockets and thinking I have to do this first, because it doesn't really work like that. And the most healing thing will be your journey through life, right? When life shows you something different, because you're actually expanding into something different. Abundance, joy, true connection, love, you know, and at the same time knowing that we put some things on pedestals that it doesn't work when we do that. For example, like we think, oh, when I get the relationship, everything will be perfect. No, you're going to have life, but you were going to have life anyway, so why not add love? You were going to have life anyway, so why not add authenticity and your purpose work and the stuff you could enjoy? Life was going to happen anyway, right? So we don't want to put things on pedestals, because a lot of the reason we resist our good is because we think when good things happen, we think it has to be all one way. We're not really taught. Again, it's emotional intelligence to understand that like nothing's going wrong when you're expanding and it looks like something else isn't working. That's just life. That was going to happen anyway, but we can add good, we can add connection, we can add our purpose work, we can add more joy, we can add more friendships, we can add, right? Well, if I was so healed, this wouldn't have happened. It may have happened anyway, right? But you're now setting a foundation where you're more prepared to navigate life. You're more prepared to receive more from life, and everything comes with its ups and downs, its good and bad side, but how we navigate it is the whole experience we have, and knowing how to navigate it better from emotional intelligence, from not getting stuck in trauma, because we're able to regulate and process as we go rather than get stuck and traumatized, because trauma is just a stuck response in the body where we haven't processed stuff, so we're trapped in it, you see. So if you want to join Sovereign, please message me. Otherwise, I'm sending you a lot of love, and I'll speak to you soon.